doing now, we are going through that process of selecting the site. We have not selected the final site yet. We are looking to ultimately come to that conclusion, I would say, within the next several weeks. We have several sites that we're still looking at, to include the Mayport Fishing Village and the property that we own here in the Mayport Fishing Village. After we do that, what we really need to do in order to develop a plan that works, is we've got to look at what kind of a layout the cruise terminal would have. And once we've determined what sort of layout the cruise terminal would have, we have to make sure that it's operationally feasible. In other words, it's got to work for the cruise lines. It's got to work for us as well. And then we have to determine if it's economically feasible. In other words, can we afford to build it? Can we afford to build it based upon the sort of commitment that we would get from the cruise lines? Once we have a plan that works, that's not, I say a plan that works, we're not at the point of making a decision. Then I come back and I engage all of you, all of the residents in Mayport, and if it in fact is the Mayport site. I would engage all of you, I would engage all of the businesses, I would engage everybody that was affected by the development of the site, if it were in Mayport, and get your input. Listen to your ideas, and listen to your concerns, and see if together we can formulate a plan. And then once we have, if we are capable of formulating a plan, then we would move forward. Now, it may be that we can't formulate a plan. It may be that it's not economically feasible. A lot of things have changed in our world over the last 2 years. Not only has there been a massive financial crisis, but we have found that the funding that we had normally been able to rely upon for such things as dredging, the correction of the hydraulic problem at Mile Point, the refurbishment of a great deal of our capital infrastructure, excuse me, that funding, which used to come from sources like the state or the federal government, is in very scarce supply. So we are faced today with a very different situation than we had 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when we bought the property here, I had fully intended to go to the board and ask the board to spend $60 million to develop a cruise terminal in Mayport. But I don't think that that's where we are now, because we are looking at some tremendous financial needs and a paucity or a scarcity of funding from other sources than the Port Authority itself. So we are going to have to look to ourselves to fund many of these capital needs: the refurbishment of our docks, the purchase of new cranes, and most important, some of the dredging and the harbor improvement projects that in the past we would have depended upon the federal government for funding. So we've really got a very complex situation here. We have to find a site that works. We have to find a site that is economically feasible. And when I say economically feasible, that means something that we can afford. And that translates to getting a commitment from the cruise lines that can then be translated into a contract. And that contract in turn can be bonded so we can borrow the money to be able to build the terminal. The most important thing, I think, today for me is to tell you where we are, and that's where we are. We're in the process. We're moving forward as fast, but as seriously and responsibly as we possibly can. It's a very comprehensive process. The board expects that we will be very, very thorough in the way that we move forward. The board also expects and will demand, as will I, that it is a collaborative process with all of you, if in fact the site that you select happens to be Mayport. So where I am right now, I know it's frustrating for you, it's frustrating for us. We wished, I would certainly have hoped that we would have been much farther down the road. But of course, with the setback 14 months ago to basically put this process into suspended animation, if you want to call it that, or into a period of a hiatus period, that has taken us really back to square one. And going back to square one, we are in the process of doing a very, very thorough and a very comprehensive analysis as we move forward. I think today what I'd really like to do, Gary, is I'd like to open it up to, I will answer any questions I possibly can. I would like to hear your ideas. I'd like to hear your concerns. I will also tell you that as soon as we do have a plan that works, whether it's Mayport or someplace else, I will be out here again and I will deliver that plan to you. I will be willing to talk about the analysis that's gone into the development of that plan. I would certainly be willing, if it in fact is Mayport, I will then open it up to you. Then I want to make it a very collaborative process as we move forward to see if we can get to a point where we can make a decision.